Okay, Shalom Aleichem everybody. Bruchim Abayim, welcome everyone. I want to thank you for joining us. A little bit busy tonight. I'm going to have some things going on, but Be'ezus Hashem, we can learn a little bit for a few minutes. But I won't really have time for questions or anything this evening. Here in Richmond, Virginia, and since last time we met, much of the snow has melted. Very nice. We can have snow, and then now it's close to 50 degrees today. We're beginning today the third chapter of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It says Siman Gimel in Levishus Begadav Halucha. These are the laws of putting on your clothes and just how you go, how you should conduct yourself. Aleph, the first halacha says Ksiv, quotes the prophet Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. It's a very famous verse. V'etznea leches im elokecha. Alright, we learned this. Oh, I'm sorry. We already did this part. We're up to the fourth halacha. I'm sorry. Up to the fourth halacha. So again, it's chapter 3, law number 4. It says like this: Fisha metzina sheyamin hi chashuva b'Torah le'inyan avoda le'inyan boyin yad avoyin regel shemaliyim v'shel mitzvah le'inyan mitzvahs chalitza. We see that in the Torah, the right hand is considered to be the more important hand, the more honored hand. As far as the service in the temple, the priest would use his right hand when he performed the necessary sacrificial rituals, like sprinkling the blood, and the excuse me. And incidentally, a left-handed Kohen was not allowed to serve in the temple. Okay, and also l'inyan boyin yad boyin regel shalom. Same thing, that when Aaron and his sons were made priests, when they were ordained and consecrated to be the priests, blood from the sacrifices was put on their right thumbs and their big toes. That was just a one-time event, and then afterwards their children didn't need this because they would be born with this priesthood. So it was put on the thumb of the right hand and the big toe of the right hand. Shel mitzvah, also when we're purifying the leper. A leper doesn't mean what we call in English a leper, but rather what the Bible considers a leper, which is a different type of leper. Linyan mitzvahs chalitza. Also, there's a mitzvah of chalitza in Deuteronomy 25, chapter 25, verses 5 through 10. The Talmud talks in Yevamas about if, God forbid, a man who is married dies without children, his wife would have to marry his brother. And if she doesn't wish to, there's a ceremony, taking off a shoe and spitting on the floor and so forth, and this is done the right foot and so forth. Incidentally, if God forbid the situation happens today, we do not allow the couple to get married, the brother of the deceased, the brother-in-law, to marry his sister-in-law for the sake of Yivum, but rather they must make chalitza. If afterwards they would want to get married, it would be okay, but we do not make Yivum today. So we see that the Torah, indicates there's something special about the right hand, the right foot, that the right side has something special about it. If we get into Kabbalah a little bit, we know that the right hand represents chesed, which is kindness, So that's the deference to the right hand. Uh, One of the reasons, even the old custom among Jews, was to wear garments. If the men would wear the garments, where the right would cover the left. This even the shirt was buttoned that way and so forth. Nowadays, in American culture, that's um, the way the women would wear their clothes, and the men wear left over right. But still, in many communities, in many Jewish communities, the men still wear the clothing right over left, as far as the coat, the vest, the jacket, and even in some cases a shirt. That the buttons would be on the left side. Anyway, so therefore, when you get dressed, and really with everything that you do, just always put the right first, and then the left. The left. Meaning, when you put on a shirt, you put the right arm first, and then the left arm. You put on a coat, the right arm first, and the left arm. You put on your pants, the right leg first, and then the left. The chalitza seminalim ushar begadim, and you put on the right shoe first, and then the left. The chalitza seminalim ushar begadim yachlei shel small tchila. And if when you're taking things off, you take the left off first. When you take off your coat, you take it off from the left side. It should be longer time on the right side. You take off your shoes, you take off the left shoe first. That is the respect that we can give to the right side in that way. But when it comes to tying something, the left is more important. All of as tefillin, because we put the tefillin on the left hand, so everything that's tied should do the left way first. So therefore, how should a person put on shoes? If you're wearing shoes that have laces, not everyone wears shoes with laces. For those who do, how do we put on the shoes? Like this. Therefore, anything that needs to be tied, you tie the left first and then you tie the right. So if you're putting on shoes, this is the way you do it. You put your right shoe on, but you don't tie it. Then you put the left shoe on, you tie the left shoe, and then you go back and tie the right shoe. And the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that's how it is with all clothing that have ties on them. However, the Mishnah Berurah says it only applies to shoes. In the old days, they would tie the shirts also. An interesting story that I heard was that there was a Jewish person, wasn't brought up particularly religious, but they met one time a religious person who told them that told him this halacha. He learned this halacha once. He wasn't a particularly religious person, religious Jew, but he learned this halacha once, that there's even a Jewish way to put on shoes. That you put the right shoe on, then the left shoe, and then you tie the left shoe. You don't tie the right shoe, you tie the left shoe, and then you tie the right shoe. And so too, when you take it off, you untie first the right shoe, then you untie the left shoe, take off the left shoe, then untie the right shoe. Then take off the right shoe, rather. You untie the right shoe, then untie the left shoe, take off the left shoe, then take off the right shoe. So there's a Jewish way, according to halacha, how do we put on our shoes? And it seems like a minor issue. Does it really make that much of a difference? I mean, sure, it's a nice thing. We don't have to worry about these things. Certain people, they get nervous and they worry, particularly Jewish people, they have this nature. They get worried about silly things. How do we put on our shoes? This, that. I'm talking non-religious people. And it's not silly the halachic way. I'm saying it's silly. Sometimes people, they try to put on both legs at the same time, or they're worried about it, and they make up their own things from their mind. How to get dressed and so forth, and it's silly. this here we see there's reasons for it, and therefore it's important. Um, because the Torah explains the reason for it. It's a Torah reason. It's an authentic Jewish thing. But beyond that, it's a very interesting story. So this person learned this halacha, and he heard about it, he remembered it, and even I think it was maybe one of the only things that he kept as a Jew. Um, then it came to a point where he was about to, I think he was going to marry someone who was a Christian, and he was going to convert to Christianity to marry this person, and he was going to get baptized, and he had to take his shoes off to be baptized. As he was taking his shoes off, he remembered that he was a Jew, and he ran away from there and didn't get baptized. So we see that everything that we do, it has tremendous value as a Jew. Okay. Hey, number 5. A person should be careful not to put on 2 garments at the same time, because this causes forgetfulness. It's something I have to work on myself. It's something that I'm nichshel in, and I have to do tshuva for. In the Sefer Seder Hayom, the old Biala Rebbe says that we have to be very careful not to put 2 garments on at the same time, and not to take them off at the same time either, as this brings about all kinds of horrible things to a person's life. So we have to try to be careful for this. Okay. One thing is it causes forgetfulness, but there are other issues that the Kabbalists talk about, putting on or taking off 2 garments at the same time. Okay, Vav. Number 6. Aser leilach arba amas or l'hoitzin piv davar shebekadusha begilei rosh. It is prohibited to walk 4 cubits, or to say any holy thing, Torah study, or prayer, or make a bracha and so forth, begilei rosh, with an uncovered head. This is talking about men, or the same thing as with married women, and we see even according to the Rambam, unmarried women should also cover their hair, but it's a different thing. But you shouldn't, a woman could walk around more than arba amas with her hair uncovered. According to some opinions, it's definitely better not to. But we'll get into that because because I'll say that it's a big blessing if the walls of a woman's house never see her hair. Anyway, also, alright, then the Rambam, no one really follows that today. Very few people do. There are a few communities, the Yemenite communities, and some small Hasidic communities, but not the single girls also covering their hair. But anyway, we're not talking about women's hair cover right now. We're talking about men covering their hair, wearing a yarmulke, wearing a hat, and so forth. Rabbi Davis quotes here the Mishnah Berurah. He says, in our times you shouldn't even sit in the house with an uncovered head. And he says, how much is a cubit? There are different opinions. What's generally understood is that it's not the issue really sitting for a second with your head uncovered, but sitting for the amount of time that it would take to walk 4 cubits, which is a very short amount of time with the head uncovered, is also a problem. There was I don't know if I have to mention this story, but there was someone who was very famous. He was arrested, and they made him take his yarmulke off when he was arrested, and he refused to move because he said he can't walk 4 cubits with his head uncovered. So they had to take him in a wheelchair or something. But really, even the wheelchair, it's also a problem. You're not supposed to. It didn't really help that much that he was being schlepped around. And in that case, whatever, it might have been a different case. Maybe he shouldn't have been so strict. But anyway, a man should always have his head covered. The children, little boys, also have to cover their head, have to wear yarmulke. Because that causes them to have fear and awe for heaven, for God. We see the story in the Talmud in Shabbos about Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amaru Le Kaldoi Choizim B'Kechavim Berech Kenova Hava. She was told by the Chaldeans, and then he explains the Chaldeans means the astrologers, the people looking in the stars, that your son is going to be a thief. So l'shavak te legale reisha. The Talmud says she went to the rabbis and asked, "What should I do? My son is destined to be a thief." So the rabbis told him that he should cover his head. Amar alei. So what did she tell him? She told him, cover your head so you should have fear of heaven. And the story goes that he lost the yarmulke, and then he went wild, and then they covered his head, and he went back to normal. And that's where we have the term yarmulke. Yarmulke means Yireh Malka, the fear of the king in Aramaic. It's not yarmulke like people say. It sounds like a Japanese, like Yamaha something. It's yarmulke with an R, with a resh. A lot of people, they think that the yarmulke, the shape that we have the yarmulke, there's something holy to that. Really, it's nothing particularly holy about wearing a skull cap. The only reason we have it is because it's not comfortable always to wear a hat. And so we have a small hat to be more comfortable for around the house. But in the old days, people always wore hats. Whenever they left their homes, they always would wear a hat. And it really doesn't matter if it's a yarmulke or a hat. It doesn't make a difference. Okay. Next, number 7. But the thing is that really, we do have an idea that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, in the temple wear 2 yarmulkes. We wear the yarmulke and the hat. And also we have, that's one thing, but in addition to that is that we have such a thing that when we're making certain religious duties, we should have what we call ituf. Ituf means to be wrapped up. And so when we say there are 2 times in particular that we need to have ituf, that our head should be wrapped up, and that is by saying the Shemona Esrei, and by saying the Amidah prayer, and by saying the Birkas Hamazon, benching, the grace after meals. During those 2 times, the Talmud says that maybe also during the Shema as well. During those times, a person should have his head covered with a talis. The thing is, most people don't eat wearing a talis, and most people don't pray mincha and maariv with a talis, and many single men don't wear a talis at all. So what do we do when we're not wearing a talis? Is that we wear a hat on top of the yarmulke in place of the talis. That's only really necessary for, like I said, the Shemona Esrei and the benching. However, pious people wear 2 head coverings for any religious aspect, any part of the whole prayers, and any bracha that you're making, and even some when they're learning, but for sure when you make a bracha, and when you're doing something holy, meeting an important rabbi, to show honor to the rabbi and so forth. It doesn't necessarily need to be a particular type of hat, but it's good to have. Some people will, if they don't have the hat, they'll wear two yarmulkes, or some people, if they're making a bracha, they'll take their sleeve because just your hand is not a cover, and they will cover their head with the sleeve while they're making the bracha. And that is a proper thing to do if a person doesn't have the hat with him. Incidentally, although again this is really not applicable right here, but the Chaim Kanievsky Shlita, one of the great Gedolim of today, he said that it's better for a person to pray privately without a minyan with a hat than to go to the minyan and pray without the hat. Maybe go to minyan and answer Amen and so forth, but it's better to daven with the hat on. Again, you can wear any type of cap and so forth. It doesn't have to be a particular type of hat. People make a big deal about the black hat, isn't that? That doesn't really make a difference. But to wear a hat is important. Okay. Aser leilach v'keimus kufa v'gar natu. Number 7 says you should not walk with an upright posture in a haughty way. Not just upright in a normal way. You should have good posture, but not in a proud way, showing how proud you are. And you shouldn't have like an outstretched neck. In Shinamar, it says in Isaiah chapter 3 verse 16, God is rebuking the Israelites and saying, Tilachna Netiyas Garan, that the women are walking with their necks stretched out in a haughty way. Also, you shouldn't bend over too much. But a little bit, be a little bit humble. Because you have to see what's in front of you, so you shouldn't knock into things. But also you should see where you're walking. That's the Rebbeinu Yonah and the Sefer Yira says like that. You should see in front of you, and you should see the floor. You don't have to see your feet. You should see where you're going, so you shouldn't step on something dirty and get your shoes dirty and so forth, and it could be a problem with praying and so forth. He says, "Gamim halacha shel adam nikrim chacham u'baldeyahu v'shoyte b'sachol." The way a person walks, you can tell if he is wise and intelligent, or if he is a fool and a boor, a low person. This is what King Solomon said in his wisdom. Says in the book of Ecclesiastes, Koheles, chapter 10, verse 3, that also in the way that a foolish person walks, it shows that his heart is empty, or his heart fails him. And he says to everyone that he is a fool. That he shows his foolishness in just the way he walks. Okay, Ches, number 8. A man should be careful not to walk in between two women. And also, two men should be careful not to allow a woman to pass between them. I seem to remember another version of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch that included in this also two dogs, a man walking between two dogs, or a dog walking between two men, and a man walking between two pigs, or a pig walking between two men. That's for a different reason than women. It's not to be insulting to women, and maybe that's why Rabbi Davis left it out, or maybe, I'm not sure, because I remember seeing that. And that's why, a lot of rabbis, when they go out, they take a gaba with them to make sure that they shouldn't be walking in between two women. They go out and speak. That they can be careful with this if you have someone walking with you. It's always good to have someone walking, and in that case also not to let a woman walk in between us two. And so too, when people, they go in the street, they should be careful for this. With the way they walk also, a woman shouldn't be walking together between two men. If three people walking together and one's a woman and two are men, or two are women or one a man, whoever, if it's two men and one woman, the woman should be on the side, not in between. And so too, if it's a man and two women, the man should be on the side and not in between. Okay, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you by Shalosh Shudas. And it's Hashem. I'm planning, if plans change, we'll announce on Facebook. Anyone who has any questions can contact me on. I'm sorry I don't have time for questions today. You can contact me on Facebook, Rabbi Joseph Kolakowski, or email me at josephkolakowski@gmail.com. All right. Have a wonderful evening.